I am the Digital Library Manager at the University of Salford, and I was also responsible for the Alma implementation. I was the project manager on the Alma implementation. As Ulrich just said, we've been live since July 2013, so we consider ourselves to be Alma veterans now, old hands at it, and lots of people come and ask us about Alma and how it's going on, so it's really good to come out and talk about our experiences. A lot of people ask where Salford is. It does actually say on our logo, we're near Manchester, who you may be more familiar with for the couple of small football teams that they have. I think Manchester's also quite famous for having quite bad weather, so it's used to the rain over there as well. Okay, so a little bit about the University of Salford. We have 20,000 students, and 3,000 of those are international students. And we have 2,500 members of academic and support staff in the university. And the university is split into 4 colleges and 9 schools. The actual library is split across 4 physical sites. We have 500,000 physical books, 2,500 physical journal titles, 17,000 e-journals and 300,000 e-books. You should also note we're a 24-hour service. We open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I think last year we only closed on Christmas Day, so we open all year. So we make sure that our services are available either physically or electronically to our users all the time. So it's 24-hour access all the time, either via our kind of Primo interface or via our physical sites. So I thought I'd start a little bit of background to the project on why we went with Alma and kind of some of the drivers for moving to Alma at Salford. Back in 2009, the university approved a digital library plan, and part of that was our new Media City campus. In Salford, we have an area called Media City, and the BBC, who you may have heard of, moved up to the north of England, so it was quite a big deal in 2011. And we opened a campus at Media City right next door to the BBC. And Media City it's got very much a focus on digital media. It's a real digital hub. And we wanted our collections and our services to reflect this, the fact that we were having this new campus. So part of the digital library plan was to review all our systems. And that started in 2009. So we implemented RFID in 2010. We went to 100% self-service. In 2011, we implemented Primo. So again, that was to promote our anywhere, anytime access for all our users. And then the final stage of that was to review the rest of our business systems and look at whether we could consolidate the business systems and then implement a unified resource management system. So that's really kind of the background to where we've got to today. So our systems review focused on these key systems. We had a UK-based library management system called Talis. We had a library catalogue that kind of sat over the top of that called Prism. We were using SFX, we were using MetaLib, and also we had an in-house electronic resource management system, which was basically an access database. We wanted to try and see what we could do to reduce the number of systems down. The main area of concern that we had was our library management system. It wasn't quite as bad as that, but it wasn't far off. We'd had Talis since 1996, and although it was really good at managing print resources, it wasn't great at managing electronic resources. And as we saw the move towards electronic resources, we knew we needed a system that was going to manage e-resources. Similarly, the library catalogue, although it was great for our users to discover print collections, it really didn't help them find e-resources, and they were having to access lots of different systems to find the resources that they needed. Because we'd had the system in place for so long, since 1996, and things hadn't changed, we found that staff had put a lot of manual process in place, lots of workarounds. We had lots of spreadsheets. I know I've heard people mention kind of Excel spreadsheets in previous presentations, and that was similar to us. We had lots of kind of these manual things in place. There was also a reliance from the library upon our IT department. So our IT and our library sit as 2 separate departments. And the servers for the library management system sat with IT. So our library had very little control over the actual configuration and the development of the library management system. So we wanted to bring that control back to the library so that we could actually drive forward the developments on the library management system. And things that we were doing with IT, things that should have been quite simple, like moving stock, doing bulk changes, our financial year rollover, all that had to be planned in with IT, and quite far in advance, so things were taking a long time to get done. We wanted to have that agility by moving it back to the library. The LMS itself was becoming increasingly expensive, so we were looking at how we could reduce costs. But one of the positives of having a system we've had since 1996 is that your staff really like it because they know what to expect. They go in every day and nothing changes. And that was a big thing for us, and I'll kind of come on to change as I go through the presentation. So in order to move to a new library management system, we had to produce a really strong business case. We already had funding in place from the digital library plan, but we had to get support from our IT colleagues. They had a lot of concerns. We were moving this big system out to the cloud, which they'd previously maintained in-house. So we had to make sure that we got support of the university, especially from our IT colleagues. So our business case focused on several areas. Firstly, the increase in e-resources in the university. The fact that we could reduce the total cost of ownership, reduce the number of systems down that we were maintaining. We looked at the financial savings that we would make. We had to align it to the strategic objectives of the university, so we had to make sure that we were in line with what the university wanted to achieve as well. We looked at what benefits there would be to the actual users, not just to the library staff, but what benefits would actually bring to our students, as well as the internal processes. And finally, what improvement we could get from the management information that we could get from a different system. So the reduction in total cost of ownership, and I think it's been covered in other presentations today, obviously the fact that we were moving to the cloud, it was going to be maintained by Ex Libris, and also the fewer systems to maintain. So this was our existing infrastructure with Primo as a discovery interface on the top, but underneath that sat all these different systems, Talis, ERM, MetaLib, our SFX and the OPAC. And what we saw is we wanted to move to this unified resource management system of having just one core system and then the discovery interface for our users. We aligned ourselves to strategic objectives of the university by one of the key goals of the university was to transform infrastructure and services, and we could identify that with introducing a new library management system, we'd be able to streamline our processes and also manage and enhance access to our resources by improving the Primo interface, by getting rid of the library catalogue, by getting rid of all these different systems. The fact that users could just go to one system to find everything, access their account information, see the availability of print stock would be a benefit to all our students. Our library management system was becoming increasingly expensive to maintain. It didn't integrate very well with other systems, so we were having to pay for consultancy costs for our supplier to integrate with things like Primo and our self-check machines. And we also had to have licenses for every external system we wanted to integrate with. So we had a connector license that we had to pay for Primo. We had 11 self-check machines and we had very expensive licenses for each of these. We wanted to really reduce this down. We identified that the benefits to users would be that Primo would be the main discovery interface, that the library catalogue would be going and so would SFX, and that students would be able to see the availability of the resources from Primo and access their account information. We also identified new benefits going forward that we'd be able to make. So one of the things that we're currently doing is enabling our students to make fine payments or library payments through the Primo interface, and that's something we hope to introduce in the next couple of weeks. The analytics, we were really keen as part of the business case to show that we needed a really strong understanding of our collections and that the management information provided by a system such as Alma would be able to provide this, providing prescriptive management information, enabling us to forecast things that were going to happen and plan, really manage our budgets and be agile to change that was needed in a changing library environment. So why Alma? So I've already kind of mentioned lots of benefits that we put forward in the business case, but there were lots of other reasons as well. Ulrich mentioned that we were part of the early adopter programme, and when the early adopter programme was announced, it fitted in quite nicely with our budgetary timescale. So we had finance available for that financial year that the early adopter programme would be going live. And if we hadn't have spent it in that year, we would have lost the money. So we wanted to kind of make sure we got a system that year. And so the only option for us really was to go as an early adopter. We maybe wouldn't have gone as an early adopter otherwise, because obviously it's a big change going to a system that you can't see at that point. Obviously, as an early adopter, there was some financial benefits going to a system that wasn't proven. So we took a risk. But we also thought it was going to be a really interesting project to work with the supplier, to work with other libraries who were moving forward to see how we could develop this system and what input we could have, how we could input into kind of the workflows that were in the system, integrations. And that has been realised. We've really kind of, we've seen the development of Alma since we've gone live and since becoming an early adopter. We've seen a lot of the things that we've suggested and things that we've inputted in actually come into fruition. Obviously, the risk for us was that we purchased a system that didn't exist. It was in development, there were development partners, but nobody was actually in production. So when we purchased it, we hadn't actually really seen it working. So to get buy-in from the staff was really difficult. We wanted a system as well that was adapting to the changing library environment. I've mentioned already that we were moving towards electronic resources, and we wanted a system that would be, continue to move in the right direction. The flexibility of service provision. The fact that our staff aren't tied to one particular PC. With our previous library management system, the software had to be loaded onto a local client, so the staff had to sit at a local PC. Alma's web-based, so if they need to work from home, they can work from home. Not that many of them want to do that, but it's an option open to them. And we're also keen to kind of align ourselves with a supplier that had a really strong roadmap going forward, something that we could see was actually going to adapt to the changing needs of the library and wasn't kind of a static system that wasn't going to move like we'd had previously. I think we've already mentioned as well, people have mentioned the strong user community, and that was another draw for us. We already had Primo, and we knew that it was a very, very active Ex Libris community. And we felt that we could really draw on the expertise. We saw that there were lots of people sign up to the early adopter programme, and we knew that this kind of global support that was out there was going to be really good for us moving forward. We hadn't had that with our previous library management system. And that's kind of really been fantastic for us. The Alma mail list is really active. There's an Alma product working group that works with Ex Libris on moving the product forward. And also that collaboration that we have with other institutions, which we just didn't have previously. So we were able to kind of work with other universities that have got this product and talk about our issues and our problems and find ways forward and solutions. The fact that we were moving to the cloud, again, was really appealing to us. As I've mentioned before, it brought the control of the system back to the library. So it wasn't no longer with our IT colleagues, and we were able to do a lot more in the library on the configuration and changes and bulk changes to the system. The fact that we were getting 24-hour support 7 days a week, that's vital for our service, which is a 24-hour service. And it was key that the data centre was based in the EU, so the fact that the data centre was in Amsterdam also helped us kind of drive the project forward in the university, because that was key for data protection. So a little bit about the project itself. These are our timescales. So on the 27th of November 2012, we actually got access to our sandbox environment, and that was the first time we'd actually seen Alma. On the 11th of March, we sent our configuration form off to Ex Libris, and this told Ex Libris how we wanted Alma to be set up for us, how we wanted it to operate, how we wanted the loan periods and the opening hours to work. On the 10th of April, we sent our first test data extract to them. And then on the 12th of April, we finally got access to our production environment, so we could actually see our real live Alma at that point. On the 30th of April, we had a functional workshop on site for 4 days. So Ex Libris came on site and we worked through our workflows and processes and did lots of training on site. And then we entered our cutover period on the 27th of June. At that point, we stopped all operations on the library management system for acquisitions and for cataloguing. So we carried on circulating for our users, but we stopped anything else in the kind of the back office processes. And at that point, we extracted all the data from Talis and sent it off to Ex Libris. And then on the 15th of July, we went live. And that date was, it didn't slip. We agreed that date right at the beginning of the project. And I don't think anybody's dates have slipped. Everybody's kind of gone live on time. But you can see it was a very, very fast, considering we were early adopters and we were one of the first universities to move, it was very fast and a very agile process. The Alma project team, it was sponsored by the University Librarian, so we answered to the University Librarian. It was a cross-library team. But we also had lots of colleagues on the project team from our IT department. It was really key to get IT buy-in because they had to do all the work on any integrations on the internal systems. They also had to extract all the data from our legacy system. We found that the resource changed across the project of the life cycle of the project. And we answered to a project board monthly. We went and reported on what was happening. It was really, it was a big move, and we had to make sure the university had to be happy that we were making the right decisions and we were moving on the right track. And we also set up lots of subgroups to work on specific issues. And these are kind of our subgroups. So it's a big project, Alma. So we had subgroups looking at data, system integration, our processes and workflows, our implementation, and under that, lots of different areas. And this was really key to kind of make sure for the success of the Alma project. So things that we did in those subgroups preparing for Alma, we did an awful lot of data cleanup. We found we had lots of issues with data, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We looked at the configuration. We did a lot of process mapping. We looked at what training we were going to put in place, and then the system integration. The data cleanup, we'd had this system since 1996, so you can probably imagine that the data wasn't in the best state. We had lots of old sites that had closed down years ago, but we still had books there apparently. So we had to move all these books back into the main stock. We had messages attached to items. We'd had cataloguing projects where people had put messages on, so we had to clear all those off. We had a site called repairs, and in Alma it operates quite differently. It's a process rather than I think we put a workaround in place. So we'd actually created this site called repairs, and we had hundreds of books that were being repaired in this site, so we had to clear all those out. Embarrassingly, we had never cleared out any user records, so we had user records going back to 1996, which was really bad management. So we had to purge all those borrower records. We also had to do a lot of changes with department codes. So changes had happened in the university and people were in kind of wrong departments. So we had to do a lot of changes there as well. And that was important because going forward to Alma, we didn't want all this kind of bad data in Alma. And also, we wanted to make sure that any statistics we were going to get off were accurate, that we were reporting on the correct codes, we were reporting on users being in the correct places. The data migration was done. We had a data migration form which Ex Libris sent through to us, and in there we mapped all our codes and where all the kind of libraries were and where they should be and meant to be. It really helped with the data cleanup. We also had to go through this thing called a P2E process. And in that, we had to identify our print and our electronic resources, because the print and electronic resources are managed very differently in Alma to how they are in our traditional library management system. There was also data which couldn't be migrated. So we couldn't take over, and this may have changed now. Obviously, things have moved on since we went live, but we couldn't take over any order data. We could take over orders for continuous orders for subscriptions, but we couldn't take over any orders that were outstanding for books. So we had to cancel all the orders for all the books that we had outstanding, and then we had to reorder them in Alma. There was also an issue around historic data, so we couldn't take over historic data for borrowers. So we couldn't see what borrowers had done in the past. And this is really important for collection management, because we have a policy whereby if items haven't been borrowed for 5 years, then we get rid of them. So we had to find a way of storing this data so that we could go back and retrospectively report on it and make sure that we were managing the collections effectively. The configuration was really scary. We had a very large spreadsheet which had 12 tabs on it, and we didn't really know what we were doing to start with, because we couldn't even really see the system at that point, and we couldn't see how it was configured. So we were making decisions and we weren't sure it was going to work out. Thankfully it did, but also because this configuration had been in place for so long, for so many years, a lot of it didn't make sense. So it gave us a really good opportunity to actually look at how we got things set up, how we got our library set up, how we got our loans set up, and actually simplify that and make it easier for us, for Alma, and for our users to understand. Another really important thing that we did was review all our workflows. And we sat down with all the different areas from across the library and mapped all our different workflows and processes. We had a catalogue of 74 processes where the library management system was involved. And it's through that we identified where processes weren't working, where maybe processes moved from one team to another, and then we discovered that actually they weren't moving, and things just stopped. So this was an example of our workflows that we did. We used swim lanes to identify the different teams across the library that were involved in the process. And then we used this information, we sent all these workflows off to Ex Libris, and they were able to see what our processes were, and then we were able to look at how it actually mapped onto Alma. And it helped us as well plan the training, understand what our staff needed to do with the system. Integrations are, that's quite a big, issue moving to Alma, because you're not just integrating one system, you're integrating multiple systems at once, and doing that simultaneously is quite a challenge. So the integrations we identified initially were EDI, so integrating with our book supplier, our RFID, so our self-service kiosks, printing, linking to our student information system, that's the SIS system. In the UK, we have to be able to link to the British Library as well. So we have interlibrary loans where we specifically use the British Library. So that had to work, that integration had to work. We wanted to use LDAP for our users to be able to authenticate into Alma. Obviously, the Primo implementation, which was fairly straightforward because Ex Libris did that for us. That was quite easy. And we also wanted to develop some new integrations. So we wanted to bring in the online payments through Primo and also through finance. Just through sheer lack of resource, we couldn't do everything, and we had to prioritise. So we knocked out kind of the online fine payments and the finance integration until we could do that as a kind of an Alma stage 2, a second phase of the project. And these were the integrations that we concentrated on as absolutely being essential for our go live. So LDAP, previously it had been managed within the library management system, but we had a university policy to use LDAP. So there were some issues around opening security of LDAP to the cloud, but our IT department were quite happy with that. So we now we do support LDAP and Alma. Our self-service kiosks, we have Biblioteca. I think we were the first library who had Biblioteca to move to Alma. And that was quite key, kind of getting the SIP2 messages that were going to and from the cloud to Alma, to the kiosks, that the kind of appropriate security was around that data. And we have a server on site which has security software on. Our student information we bring in through an API, and so as soon as a student joins the university, they're immediately added to Alma. And our book suppliers, we have 2 main suppliers, so that was kind of a steep learning curve for us at Salford. It had been previously set up by our previous supplier, and it was quite a different approach in Alma to what we had previously. Previously, the inventory information, so the information about where the book was located and the loan type, came in on an EDI message, but now it comes in on a MARC record, and we had to do a lot of work with our suppliers to get that to work, but that is now working. And we're now testing embedded order data where we're placing orders through the book suppliers' websites, and that should be going live this week. What was key in testing for us was we actually purchased the premium sandbox. So the sandbox that you get with Alma is an out-of-the-box sandbox, and it has out-of-the-box data, out-of-the-box configurations. And that was really difficult for us to test. We couldn't test a lot of the integrations because it wasn't set up to match what we had at Salford. So I would say that, a premium sandbox is for us it was an essential. And that enables us to really kind of test all the scenarios that we had. And if we make any configuration changes now going forward, we can do that on our premium sandbox and be happy that it matches all our configurations. Training, I think, has kind of been mentioned in a couple of the other presentations. So we had Alma Academies before getting our access to our sandbox because we couldn't see Alma. A lot of it was delivered via WebEx. We had an on-site functional workshop, which we involved the library wider team in. And we're all Alma certified now, so we're all able to make configuration changes from the kind of systems team. We couldn't touch the back end of Alma until we'd had that certification training, but we are all able to do that now. So, just a little bit about some other things that happened at Salford. I think changing LMS after 17 years is really challenging. Changing processes and workflows and just generally systems is really hard for staff to do. But we didn't just do that at Salford. We also, just go back. We also refurbished the library. We closed the library. We restructured all the staffing. So everybody got a new job description and we lost staffing. And we did Alma. So it was a real kind of period of change. It was very, very difficult to manage, and you cannot underestimate kind of the impact that it has on staff. I think a year on, staff are now okay, but obviously at the time it was very disruptive. So our current position, staff are now kind of embracing the new ways of working, this task-driven way of working, that it's role-based, that people log on, they don't see the whole system, they just see what's relevant to them. We're getting used to the monthly releases. This was kind of a big change for us, is that Alma changes every month. So we get a new release every month. It's added to the sandbox 1 week before the production, and then we get our release notes. And what we do, we have a regular monthly programme now where we bring all the key members of staff in. We go through the release notes. We have an understanding of what the issues might be, of what the changes are that we might want to make, or if we can choose to make those changes. And then it's deployed to all the Alma environments the first Sunday of the month, and we all hold our breath and hope everything's okay. We now speak Alma. So I don't speak German, but I speak Alma. Alma had a whole different language that our staff had to get used to, lots of different words, and again, it's just familiarisation. I think what's key with Alma as well for the Alma development, it is this collaboration. We see Alma development kind of at the centre of having the Alma mail list, Alma UK, Igloo, Alma product working group, all working with Ex Libris to make sure that the Alma development continues and continues going forward. The impact at Salford is we've got fewer systems to maintain, we've got the control now of the library system, we're still fine-tuning configurations, and reviewing our workflows, and the training is still ongoing. And going forward, we've got kind of some key developments. We are doing our finance system, we're integrated with our finance system. Our online fine payments should be going live in the next couple of weeks. We want to improve the quality of data from our internal systems. So this isn't an Alma thing, this is something that we can see there's an impact from data coming from our student information system is having an impact on our analytics, and we need to get that right. And more importantly, we're trying to get our staff to change their mindset, to understand that the system is an evolving system, that we don't have to put workarounds in place, that we want them to think differently and challenge Alma, ask us to, can we change things, can we change configurations, that it's not kind of a system that is going to stand still.